Hello, everybody. This is Rick DiClemente of Star Self Astrology in Pittsburgh. Lots to talk about tonight. If you're new to our show, you can look through the YouTube channel and see the past 22 or 23 episodes. We meet for free on Thursday nights, 8 o'clock Eastern. And it's a general roundtable. We talk a lot about different astrological things from beginning to end, from beginning to intermediate to advanced. So it's not a straight course. I am forming a beginner course soon. If you are interested, that will take place on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock over this same web. And you can write to me if you're more interested in that. I've got a lot of leftovers to talk about tonight before I go into a slow study of Vaughn's chart, because I want to take my time going through a chart slowly, and then you won't feel so overwhelmed by me, because I look at charts very quickly and it all assimilates very fast, and I take it for granted. As you know, things are nuts right now. They're nuts. Now, there are many ways to call it. Why are they nuts? I'm going to show you exactly why. Let's take a look here. All right. Okay, do you see a chart in front of you, everybody? John? Okay, this is the current chart, and I want you to focus right here. This is the symbol, one of the symbols for Eris, E-R-I-S. Eris is a new Plutoid or mini planet that was discovered beyond Pluto in 2003, given the name Xena, and then changed to the name, permanently assigned to the name of Eris in 2005. She is right there. She takes 540 years to go around the circle. 540, and up until then, Pluto was the slowest, going 250 some years. Okay? But what's so significant is Eris and Uranus. You can see how they're almost exactly together now. And they're in a volatile sign like Aries. And it's the planet Uranus. And Eris is no picnic either. So you got Uranus and Eris going to conjunct on March the 17th. The Ides of March. So, I'm not going to talk a lot about it because it's a very advanced planet that we know very little about. And this, you have to keep in mind, it doesn't matter how far away a planet is, how small it is. Pluto is one of the smallest and coldest and farthest, and it's by far the most powerful planet there is. So don't get into a Western thought process of bigger is stronger. It doesn't work that way. Eris is extremely powerful. She is the goddess of discord. She is definitely, without a doubt, bringing the women's movement. It's not coming out of nowhere. It's coming from Eris, because she's a feminist. She raises hell. She's got a very good side to her, too. I'm not going to speak much about her because I don't know much about her yet. But she's now in the vernacular, and get ready for Sedna. Sedna is next. S-E-D-N-A. Sedna will be our next planetoid to add to this group. Now, when Eris and Uranus conjuncted, they first conjuncted at the 24th degree of Aries, and then they retrograde. What a retrograde means, in the sky, the planet looks like it's going backward, but it's not really going backward. It just looks that way. Just like you pass a car, and one car looks like it's going back, as you look like you're going forward. They're both going forward. Matter of fact, they're going 50,000 miles an hour, but against the sky of the stars, they look like they're going backward. But what's funny is Eris, when two planets conjunct in the sky, or make an aspect like a right angle or opposition, they will do it 1 time, 3 times, 5 times, sometimes 7 times. Most of the time when two planets hit, they hit 3 times. They pass by, they stop, they retrograde, they stop, they go back again 3 times. That's what the retrograde motion is. And yes, I'm sorry to tell you, put your finger in your ear if you don't want to hear this. Mercury will be retrograde again in 30 days. So, Eris, Uranus is faster moving. Uranus passed up Eris, stopped, came back, hit it a second time, and I think that's now. Then we'll hit it a third time. Now, the 24th degree and the 23rd degree have two different meanings. The 24th degree is all about the evolution of the feminine. That's what this mainly is, because that was the first one. Now, the 23rd degree, which is going on in about 10 days on the 17th, and these things are so big, don't wait till the 17th. These things are in aspect now. You're asking why the planet's not so, it's going on now. And I'm going to explain it to you. Eris is conjuncting Uranus in Aries. Okay? The 24th degree, which is where it first conjuncted, the symbol is this. Blown inward by the wind, the curtains of an open window take the shape of a cornucopia, which is very intriguing. Translated by Dane Rudhyar, it's the individual consciousness represented by the house, the window, is receiving a more concentrated influx of spiritual energies. So you see, what's happening is we're getting downloaded by this tremendous universal force, and the 23rd degree is about the feminine rising and integrating new force, the feminine. New force, the feminine. You see what's happening on the planet? The women have had it. Thank goddess. Thank you. I will go in the back seat. You guys get up front and you guys drive, because we know what happens when men drive. We end up in the ditch, and you got to have a winch to get out. Anyhow, it's a wonderful time of revolution, and so many people write to me, and they don't really say it, but they tell me they don't really want it to be unsettling. Well, how are you going to go through a revolution that's calm and nice? It's not going to happen. So the way you have less unsettling is to go with the flow. But my God, you're seeing Americans wake up. This is really something, I can't believe it. Thank God. So anyhow, what's it doing? Well, I'm finding a lot of people are dying. A lot of people are getting sick. A lot of people are breaking through. They're moving forward. There's a lot of change going on now. But I want to ask you this without getting personal. Do you find, raise your hand, do you find right now there are a lot of issues in your life that have been going up and down the last 8 years, but they're coming to a peak now? And I see it everywhere. Do you feel that? Okay, I got a thumb for Mark. That's good enough. Do you feel it? Everybody else? Okay. What I think is happening is this, and believe me, you got to be a little arrogant to try to translate this, because it's too early to tell. The way we learn about these new bodies is we have to live with them for a while. So maybe in 50 years, we can look back at 2017 and ascertain what this is really about. Okay. What I think is happening is this. You got the Uranus restlessness. It's in Aries. It's next to Eris. When you go back 100 years, it's almost every 100 years when you do the research, almost exactly this hit at Jamestown, the first city in the country. It was in Gemini, the new land. You got Darwin doing his major work during one of these periods. Many of these periods happened recently in the sign of Aquarius. You had Copernicus, you had Kepler, you had Lindbergh flying across the ocean. So you have many, many major events that happened the last time these two planets conjuncted. Okay? So picture Eris is going 45 years per sign, 540. And Uranus is 84 all the way around. So about the time that Eris moves through a sign, Uranus is back again. So it's about every 100 years. So they're explosive. A lot of people think, and I'm not going to argue with them, a lot of people think that this one is going to have a lot to do with disclosure, with aliens, with UFOs revealing themselves. And I'm not going to put them down because I've learned too much that a lot of these people that sound far out are really right. But we'll wait and see. But I really think what's happening is this. You have your path. You guys know what your path is. You may need a little fine tuning. In tonight's talk, we're going to end with this subject. Well, what is in your way? What is in your way has got to go. That's what's going on. I'm not talking about being mean. I'm not talking about getting a scythe, getting out a machete, but you've got to go on your path. You've got to go because it's in Aries. Aries is all about me and adventure, and Uranus is about the real me. So you've got a triple me quality to this. So it's about me doing my thing. Now, if you want to hurt somebody, if you've been dragging somebody along, if you want somebody in your sidecar, if you're going to break the rules, I don't know what it is. You've all got your own issues, but it's got to be dealt with now. It's got to be dealt with, even on a layaway plan. It's got to be dealt with. That's what I think this is about, which is why we're seeing the emergence of the women's movement, because, I mean, they've been one of the most repressed groups of all. Okay? What if you still don't know your path? I told you we're going to cover this at the end of this discussion tonight. That's a very big subject. I've got a long list. It's the final thing on my list before I get to Yvonne's chart. All right. What is my answer? Most of the time, people know what the path is. Most of the time, people know what their path is. They come to me and say, what's my path? I say, you know. They say, no, I don't. I say, yes, you do. And then they go, yeah, I do. Your path is doing what you love. Period. Okay, we'll get back to that. Now, there are two really important dates in March. March the 18th or March the 17th is when Uranus and Eris will conjunct. So this nutso period, this feeling like you can't keep it in the bag anymore, is going to peak. And when planets start to peak like this is not time to go away to a meditation retreat. This is time to act. How many people can feel that in your life, that it's time for action? Okay. Now, do you understand? I'm sure you do. And unfortunately, I cannot get to the chat box, so I'm counting on John to kind of intercept the chat box and let me know if something is really critical that I need to deal with. What I think is happening now, because this coincides with the end of the age of mea culpa. The end of the age of mea culpa. We're done saying we're sorry. We're done bleeding. We're done crawling on the cross. What's happening now to a lot of people is, I know what I got to do. I'm making my plans. I'm starting to move forward, but I'm not really doing the action yet. Well, even that's better than staying stuck. That's okay. Sometimes you need a lot of mental preparation, work around the edges, and then you'll move and act on it. When you do, it'll happen. It'll be okay. But one of the things that's happening is, I think you can all sense this, is we're all sensing that it's okay for me to take care of myself now. And even a year ago, 2 years ago, we couldn't do it. 5 years ago, we felt guilty. We felt terrible. Back to church, back to confessional. We're so trained to feel so guilty, but now I think we're starting to see it's a part of love itself for me to allow God to work through me. I think we're seeing that. I think it's marvelous. And one of the reasons we're having so much friction in the world is there's so many institutions based upon the old concepts. And we're trying to insert the new while gently moving out the old, and that's not easy. Now let me move on. Somebody is needed muted here. I think that's it. Okay. One of the things I seek really consistently, I'm going to jump to a lot of subjects now. I was dealing with a woman one time in my office who I'd read for about 8 years. And I wasn't really getting there as much as I thought I could. And we were kind of stuck. I couldn't figure out things. And then one day, I felt like I needed to go to a certain spot, which was rather tender. It was a rather ego soft spot. And I went there, and I knew her well enough. She knew I meant well. But I went to a tender spot in her life, and I asked her about a certain thing that was kind of a little blow to her ego. The instant I did it, the vacuum cleaner outside of my door started up, and the door in my office went, "Rrr!" And I'm telling you, there is absolutely a direct correlation. It was the cleaning lady at 3:30 in the afternoon. She always comes every night at 7 o'clock. The instant I touched that spot, the screaming vacuum cleaner up against my door lasted for 4 minutes, and it had nothing to do with the vacuum cleaner. It was me touching that spot. And there was such a sore spot. Well, it's going to be sore for a while till you get it fixed. But I'm telling you, it's quantum, it's real, and you would not believe how many phone calls I do with people. And I touch that sore spot and the phone line breaks. The disconnection. The dog starts barking. Somebody knocks at the door. When your unconscious doesn't want to hear the subject, it's going to cause the disconnect. Your mind is much more powerful than you think. Her mind caused that vacuum cleaner to start. In the mind of the cleaning lady, she thought she's just going to catch up on some work. They're all interlinked. I'm not going to go on about this. But that's what I'm working on. That's exactly what's happening. It's happening on a world scale, the national scale, the personal scale. That's why you got to be so attentive to when somebody pulls you over and says, "Hey, there are 3 loose goats. Let's put these goats back in their pen." I'm still trying to figure that out. But it happens. I'm sure you all see it. Mr. Jung called it synchronicity. He's exactly right. I could give you so many examples of this. I was on one of my notes I do a lot of work for many years on serial killers because their charts are extreme. I want to know what drives them to do it. I want to know where it came from. And you got to admit, it's a really extreme thing to do. So studying great saints and studying great sinners, they're both great charts to do because you learn. I study a lot of serial killers. And what do you see in serial killers charts? You know, Susan said to me, "Is it pretty common that you find moon in Sagittarius?" Yeah, it is. I would say you see moon in Sag more than the other signs, and that's simply because Sag has no control. Sag does not understand self-control. We cannot talk to Susan Avera about this because she's got a very strong Saturn. So this subject does not apply to her as a Sag. But yes, moon in Sag is common. Moon in Capricorn is also very common. But the thing you will see, and I wait for these shows to show the graveyard, I wait for them to show the birth certificate, and I write down the date and I do the chart. I do them all the time, is you see trouble on the chart. In that chart, there are 3 things. The main thing they're missing is love. They're missing emotion. The main thing in an astrology chart that shows your link to love is Venus and the moon and Neptune. Neptune is the universal love, broad, big. Venus is the social love, being accepted in the group, and the moon is that everyday how I feel about things. Well, what do you see in these charts? Venus opposite Saturn, Moon square Pluto. You see other planets in the way. You see an awkward chart that's not built well, and the person can't get to the love in their heart. Now, I don't know why. I have my theories, but this is usually what you see. On top of that, you see violence. You see Pluto square Mars, Uranus square Mars, Neptune square Venus. You see a person who just, I was watching a show last night about a person that the poor mom and dad tried to raise this kid, and the kid grew up to be a murderer, and they tried everything they could, and the kid just didn't have it. He had 4 planets in Gemini. He had a mess with oppositions to Saturn and Uranus. He just didn't get it. You sit down and explain how people should treat people, he didn't understand it. He didn't understand it because he couldn't get to those energies. And one of the reasons a serial killer kills is because they're so frustrated. They see people loving each other and they can't get to it, so they get more frustrated. They feel left out, cheated. Of course, you have abuse, sex abuse, mental abuse, poverty, lots of things. But mostly what you see is disconnects to their emotional planets. They can't get any love. And some people, you won't believe this, you wouldn't believe how many serial killers and really awful people have Moon in Pisces. And that's because they're so sensitive that when they've been hurt so badly, they've got to do something with that pain. It's not that the Moon in Pisces is rageful, but it's more destroyed than other moons are. Now, granted, you could take a serial killer and take a baby born 1 minute later in the same hospital. The second baby doesn't grow up to be a serial killer, but the second child internalizes more and has some kind of control from somewhere. But that's what I have found. Now, next question. Suicide. You wouldn't believe how many parents have come to me. This will rip your heart in half, where their child shot themselves, and they come to me and they want to know, was it suicide or murder? And they really want it to be murder. And I understand it. They don't want to think that the child did suicide, because then it comes back. Parents are so prone to blame themselves for everything. I could have done more. Most of the cases I've looked at where that was the question, my expert opinion is it was suicide. Why suicide? Suicide is mostly brought up through guilt. And it's mostly the same reason with the serial killer. They can't get to their emotions. They can't get to them. They can't express them. They have trouble socially. And the way you tell, you don't look at the chart and say, voila. You go back to the chart and you ask them what happened at age 14, what happened at age 7, what happened at age 21. And you go back and you see a history of violence growing. So suicide is nothing more than they can't take it anymore. You're going to see a lot during the next week. During the next week, the people on this show are more likely to come out pretty well because you're working on things, or else you wouldn't be here. How many people, I don't want to get a number here. Raise your hand if you know people around you who are in danger because they're not dealing. And it's nothing new. They're not dealing. I don't care what the reason is. They're not dealing with the god-awful excuse when you see people that won't go to a therapist. And that's really sad. But you got to sit back and you got to let them have their world. I had a woman, this was really heartbreaking yesterday. I had a woman who out of nowhere went from Monday, her boyfriend is ill, to Tuesday, heart attack, to Wednesday, stroke, to Thursday, hospice. And even though they didn't have the warmest of relationships, I told her, and I've learned this, in my opinion, I've seen it. People die around you because they're ready. They know that they're ready to leave you. They feel they don't have to stay with you anymore. A lot of people leave you because they felt at a soul contract level they had to stay with you and work with you. They're worried about you. And it's a good sign when they leave because they know you don't need them anymore. And they're relieved. I've even seen pets do this. So, something to think about. Kind of Uranus Eris type of evening so far, isn't it? Okay. What happens in your chart when somebody dies? Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher, precisely. What I'm getting at is here, you could have mom die, the matriarch of the family. First 4 children in the family, you can examine each of their charts, and there's devastation. And the 5th child, there's nothing happening in the chart. Well, sometimes the 5th person, the 5th child, mom dying, they're rather indifferent about. So there's no symbol in the chart, your mom died. In your chart, there's symbols of what it means to you. So that's quite common to see. Another thing that's really weird, it's going to start fading now as women find their identity, but I've seen many times in a woman's chart, a Saturn return happens, and I ask, oh boy, what's happening with you? Nothing. Well, my husband just lost his job. You will see a symbol in a woman's chart, and the action will come out in the man's chart she's married to. So when you are married, you are truly one. I've seen symbols in the man's chart. Nothing happens, but the experience happens to the woman. I've seen it. But it does happen. What about major things like the Holocaust and the Titanic, etc., where thousands die or millions? Well, I don't understand that. It's so big. Maybe we could talk to Edgar Casey about that. But that seems to be when the collective is influenced. You're experiencing your share of the collective. I don't understand it. It's too big to wrap my mind around it, but I see it. These are some of the questions I get. Okay, now, I wanted to tell you a couple more things. Did you know, without a doubt, there are 2 days of the year that are most dangerous days of the year? And I'm talking about looking through the past, looking thousands of times and seeing this over and over and over and over. There are 2 days of the year. They're right next to each other. They're the most dangerous days of the year, and they are October 23rd and 24th. The Cuban Missile Crisis, and all kind of events. Yes, John, it's not just Scorpio. It's the juxtaposition. It's the segue. It's the contrast between Libra and Scorpio. That's why. You got to remember, and this is in the exquisite zodiac, is Saturn crossing in ascendant? That has nothing to do with this question. Save it for later, Susan. In the exquisite zodiac, the heavy focus is on one sign is this way. It goes along for a long time, and it gets to a point where it can't be anymore. Something's got to give, and boom, it morphs into the next sign. And what happens between Libra and Scorpio is Libra is lighthearted. I love my partner. Let's go to dinner. Aren't you pleasant? Boy, I love having the sounding board. It's very pleasant. But it's not this passionate, non-betrayal, dedicated forever, Neil Young bleed for you, Scorpio. That's why the contrast is so heavy. And who was born with their sun right at that spot? You can see it in the personality. Who was born with their sun right at that spot? Johnny Carson. You could see it in him. He was very Libran, very pleasant, perfect host. But you could sense a deep boiler always going off in the sky, deep, and he kept a fist around it. So when the sun goes into the 23rd and 24th, in other words, I always brace myself a bit for those couple days. Doesn't mean somebody's going to hit you with a hammer. But be aware each year when that does happen, because the universal shift takes place during those couple of days. And actually, it happens more on the 23rd than it does on the 24th. Okay, now getting to my final two things. This is what Susan asked earlier. Your path. Okay. I used to do a lot of workshops, and they were not attended very well because I didn't think people understood what astrology was. They thought it was sun sign. But every once in a while, I did workshops on life direction, and they were packed with people. People are obsessed with their life direction, and for many reasons. It's my opinion, after doing so many of them, and I would do a mini reading for each person, about 70% of the people there were blocked. They're blocked in such a fashion that they can't see what their direction is. 30% are not blocked, and they just needed a minor adjustment, and it was rather easy. What do I mean by blocked? And that's my main job. That's where my main work is with my clients, is trying to analyze where did that block come, what is it like, what do the voices say from it, how do we deal with it, et cetera, et cetera. Most people come to me, they're ready to discover and deal with the block. Now, the Course in Miracles calls it the block to the realization that love is your center. Many ways to say it. Love is your center. Your higher self can't get through to the self. It's all the same thing. The block can be the parents. It can mostly it's not the parents. It's not the upbringing. It is the past life, what I found. Sometimes it can be the parents playing out that role. But you feel guilty. You can't get to goodness. You can't get to good self-esteem. You're stuck in bad self-esteem, low self-esteem. A lot of people are paralyzed because they got the Capricorn disease, the Capricorn-itis. That's the one where you start to put your foot up on the first step. You got 100 steps to go up the mountain. You get to step 2 and you stop. Well, what if step 98's no good? I'm not going up this mountain. What if I heard a rumor step 72 was bad? I can't go up this mountain, so you stop. That's known as the paralysis. Can't go down that road. So many people stay stuck. Instead, go on up. Once you get to step 45, hey, something happened there. Somebody took over my screen. Somebody hit a button. That's okay. Once you get to step 45, at least you can see better. You see step 46, 47 is bad. But you can see where you're going. Then your vision becomes better. But this Capricorn illness, it's also a Virgo thing. It's all earth signs. I'm not taking a step unless it's productive, unless it's the step that goes towards my direction. You can't do that. You need to start to move. That's what this Aries thing is all about. You need to move, because a lot of your ability to see comes to you while you're moving, and it can't come unless you're moving. And a lot of people want to find the path, and you can't find the path, because if there is a path, it means it's someone else's. If there's a path there, somebody else made it. It's not your path. So your path is part of the doing. So anyhow, so not to go crazy with this, so what I do is I try to work with them. An awful lot is things the parents gave them. Sometimes the parent can say one little thing and it will resonate with that person, but 60 years because the person's already hung up on that thing from a past life. It's not the parent. So when I work with people and they start to realize what their blockage is, what I really work at hard is start noticing through your next couple of months how you block yourself, because most people don't realize they block themselves so quickly. Oh, I can't go there. Oh, I can't go have a good time. Oh, if I do this, I'm not being a good girl. Oh, I'm wasting money if I do this. These are usually the voices of one of the critical parents. But the problem is they try to fix it. And you can't fix it. And if you try to fix it, it gets worse. So what do? That's why they call it awareness. Awareness is magical by itself. I used to have a guy, he was really, really repressed. He would try to get out. He would even get up, get dressed, go to a nightclub, open the door, and the guilt would hit him, and the criticism would hit him. He had to shut the door, go back home. I mean, unbelievable repression. And I worked with him, and I said, look, just notice when it happens. Don't try to fix it. Because if you try to fix it, it's like, don't look in that rearview mirror. Don't look in that rearview mirror. Oh my God, that truck's still there. Oh my God, it's still there. That's what happens when you try to fix it. Oh, it's still there. Then, oh, why am I doing it? Why do I keep doing it? Why do I keep doing it? Then the whole thing just gets worse and more tension. Instead, just notice it. No, there goes my mind again. No value judgment. There it goes again. There's that voice again. And what's cool is your mind will fix it by itself. You got to trust yourself more. Your mind is so eager to help you. It's so eager to get past these blockages that if you just start noticing more and more, boy, there was a critical voice. There was a critical voice. There was a paranoid voice. So what I wrote down here, and this is really going to blow your mind. Like I'm sure it's going to be a huge surprise to you. This is the final thing I'm saying, then we'll go to the next section. When it comes down to it, and I'm not telling any of you anything new, our main problem comes because our heart is closed. You want your heart closed, you want to play it safe, but you want your life to work? Doesn't work. If you're going to kink that hose, you're not going to get the nutrients you need. Yeah, you're going to be quote unquote safe, but you're not going to be safe. That's not safe. You're dead. How are you going to prosper when you're dead? Take any leaf out there on the tree and bend that stem. It's going to die. No lecture here. It's that simple. Most people's charts, that's the problem. They've been bruised, they've been hurt, they've been taught, they've been programmed, and they've got their heart, they've got a big shield around the heart, so it won't be hurt again. Okay, if you think that's safety, good luck. And I'm not telling anybody anything new here. That's really the gist of it. And what's really good, and this should be very refreshing and encouraging for you. You don't have to solve it tomorrow. You don't have to solve it next week. And a lot of people get to these places and they start to improve and they start to improve. And then what do? They beat the hell out of themselves. Why did it take me 63 years? Boom, boom. And you really just can't do it. You can't do it. It takes that long because that's why you're here, and at least you got here. But once you start to make what I call it is the boulder in the way of your path, you don't have to get the boulder completely moved to see your vision. Just start to move it a little bit. Start to move it, identify it. And then out of nowhere, people and forces will come and help you move it. They will. And as it starts to move, you'll start to know what your path is. What is your path? And I can help you with your sixth harmonic and other details in your chart that can show. But it's mostly doing what you love. One of the things I do, which I think is kind of comical, is I always imagine a Gilligan's Island. Imagine you're stuck on an island with about 20, 30 people. What would you do? Naturally, you would be the cook, you'd be the psychologist, you'd be the fisherman. What would you do? We are ruled by archetypes that come through us that form us. We're an oak tree, you're an elm tree, you're a maple tree. So your path is not really far from what you do all the time. Okay, now I'm going to go on to Yvonne's chart. I got right to my 45 minutes. Unless there are any questions at this time, I'll be glad to take them. Unmute your microphone and ask if you have one.
Yes, Rick. I was wondering if, I know Saturn returns are a big deal.
Right.
What about Saturn crossing an ascendant?
They're completely different stories. As a matter of fact, that's really great that you asked that, because Saturn is important for two reasons. Saturn is important in terms of where is it in relation to where it started. That's the Saturn return. H14, Saturn's opposite Saturn. That's why you have the crisis in junior high. H28, the Saturn return. Everybody has the same stage at approximately the same age. Now with the houses, Saturn crossing the first house, that's Saturn in relationship to the houses. It's a completely different story. And for that, I refer you to my documents on starself.com. I wrote Saturn through the quadrants. It's an excellent article. I picked up most of my intelligence years ago from a guy named Ron Davison. Ron Davison, excellent expert on Saturn. The article is Saturn through the quadrants. Go looking in my website, starself.com, and there's an article on, there are two pull downs, looking up articles by index or looking it up by keyword. Go looking through there and you will find Saturn through the quadrants. In other words, Saturn going through the ascendant is the beginning of the first quadrant. Very, very critical. Most people are really in tune with that. The reason Saturn's so important, Saturn is the one, he's the middle planet. He's the one that shapes your job and where you live and where you hang out and what kind of clubs you're involved. He's really a daily social planet. Whereas a Saturn return in relationship to itself is more of an internal mechanism. Saturn through the houses is more of a how you blend with society. Saturn and Jupiter are both very social planets. So I suggest you read that, because I could talk about that. Maybe I will some night. For an hour about Saturn going through the 12 houses. Next.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I asked because I have somebody who has, I was looking for something to see why she has such massive restlessness and can't do the thing that she had set out to do.
Saturn can do that because the person is abhorrent of silence. Saturn can make you, you would never think of it, Saturn can make you, as I wrote in the Exquisite Zodiac, it can make you blah, 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 and you won't stop talking because you cannot stand to experience the here and now, because what you experience is how far you are from it.
Oh.
That's why Saturn's so tough, because Saturn deals with reality, and rather than experience, I always use the analogy, you're in a boat and you're floating away from the island, and you're floating away from the island. Well, what would you rather do? Look back and watch the island get smaller, or look the other way and just kind of ignore it? So Saturn can be tough because Saturn shows you exactly where you are. And a lot of people try to keep a busy life. You know, you've heard that BS people use all the time. It's good to stay busy. It's good to stay busy. No, it's not. That means you're giving into the mind. You're letting the mind run you.
See, I just had that over Christmas, last Christmas, and it was very lonely, but I didn't mind because it was really quiet and I enjoyed the peace and quiet.
Well, you're not afraid to sit with the self.
No.
A lot of people don't even know how to begin to do that because our religions don't prepare us for that. Erica, yes.
It's kind of general, but you said that Pluto is more powerful than any other planet. So you're not including the sun because that's not a planet, right?
The sun is not. The sun has no power at all except through the individual. The sun is the individual ego. Pluto is the masses. The personal planets are relatively weak. How further out you go, the more powerful. And we might see Eris is even more powerful. I happen to think that Neptune is more powerful than anything, but the sun is you, the identity, the moon is your feeling, the Mercury is your mind, the Venus is your social receptive self, the Mars is your personal aggressive self. Those are the 5 personal planets. They're not very strong at all in a universal sense. As you get to Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, most of my work is with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto is bothering somebody for some reason, sometimes Saturn. But those are the big universal planets. And so you can like it or not, but you're being manipulated and informed by the outer planets. That's why I lecture so much on how to deal with Pluto, how to deal with Neptune, how to deal with Uranus. And we'll probably see with Eris and with Sedna and the hundreds more that they're finding.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to go on now to, I sure hope she's here. Yvonne is here, yes. Yvonne, I'm going to unmute you because I'm going to want you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. I'm going to show Yvonne's chart. And yes, Yvonne, I have taken your granddaughter, and I've listed her. So she'll be up in about 3 weeks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
She's here, by the
I'm
way.
going to do Yvonne's chart, and I'm going to put a lasso around myself because I go so fast. And you guys got the typical problem that most people do. You sit there quiet because we were taught in school to sit there quiet instead of saying something. Okay, so I'm assuming a lot of you don't know how to read a chart. You got a kind of general idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to walk you through slowly how I read a chart. Plus, I see a peculiarity in Yvonne's chart that I'm not sure how to solve, and I'm going to learn something too, but it's kind of further down the road. Let me get her chart up here so you can all see it. She is a Gemini. Okay, can you all see Yvonne's? Oh, she's a Pisces, is that? No, that's wrong, I'm sorry. Wrong chart, wrong chart. Okay. Now you should be able to see Yvonne's chart. Do you see the sun in Gemini here?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to get rid of Eris. We don't need Eris for tonight. Okay, we see the sun is in Gemini. The moon is in Leo. This will be recorded for you, so you'll be able to go back to it. And the rising sign is Taurus. So the 3 main things in a chart are your sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign. Now, the sun, even though I don't show the zodiac here, these 12 pieces are not signs. These are the houses. The zodiac is through this area. So the zodiac is from around 0 Gemini through about 30 of Gemini in this area here. But I don't show the signs, I just show the houses. So her sun is in Gemini, her moon is in Leo. So during the month that Yvonne is born, 30 days, the sun goes through 26, 25, 24, 23. The 30 days of the sun in Gemini. That's what you read in your daily horoscope. During that month, the Earth is in the middle. The moon goes around once. Zodiac's a weird thing. The moon goes around the circle once a month. 28 hours, 28 hours, 28 hours, 28 hours, 28 days. So you have a lot of Geminis with the moon in Gemini. You have Geminis with the moon in Cancer. You have Geminis with the moon in Leo, etc. So automatically you got 12 different kinds of Geminis. That's why they have a different feel from each other. The sun is the main you. You've heard about the sun in Gemini, just like this president we have. He's a sun in Gemini, but he's quite different. The sun in Gemini, I have found the female Geminis are very, very different than the males. More so than any other sign. Do I see a gender issue so broad? The sun in Gemini are inquisitive, they're talkative, they like to explore, they're mental, they're cerebral, they're all obsessed with epistemology, how the mind works. They're fascinated with the mind. How does the mind work? You're going to see with her that she's very scorpionic and she's very leonine, but it doesn't come from her Gemini planets, it comes from elsewhere. But the basic Gemini part is childlike, interested. Look at Judy Garland. Judy Garland was, when she was young, she was a really great example of a Gemini. So was the innocence of Marilyn Monroe. It's that innocent, childlike, playful innocence. And what does Gemini do? Gemini discovers the mind and it explores. What's the main Gemini problem? Well, it's tied to their main interest. They want to know what's over the next fence. They always want to know what's over the next fence. So they're the sign that gets bored most. Well, if you're always living in the future, where you are isn't too interesting. So they can be always living in the future. That's the thing they got to watch against. So it's a lighthearted center. And when I talk about the sun in Gemini, I'm talking about I am drawing a map for you. I'm drawing a painting for you. And we're going to start with a yellow piece of paper. Gemini is very yellow. It's the cerebral sign. It's bright and it's light. And what I keep telling, and I got some students online here, what I keep telling the students, and that's probably the greatest thing I've ever told them, use a light pencil. Use a light brush when you start to translate. Everybody wants to be an expert and open the book and just read the chart. Way too difficult. That's why you use a light pencil and we start to see the personality unfold. You might see Yvonne is very Geminian. You might say she's not. The child I did yesterday had 4 planets in Gemini. So that person was very Geminian. The moon sign is really, really important. It's probably the hardest to talk about because it's so emotional. It's irrational. The moon part of you is your emotional nature. It's your reactions to things. How do you feel? What is it makes you feel good? It's about your family. It's about all things lunar. The family, the heritage, the traditions. A lot about your mother, how you feel, how you react. So automatically we got what? We got a sun in Gemini and a moon in Leo. That's not a bad mixture. Both are kind of lighthearted. Both are odd-numbered. Both are masculine. The odd-numbered signs are masculine. Moon in Leo is I want to do something, I want to have fun. I want to go do it, let's have fun. And it's irrepressible, and it wants to stay on the surface, and it wants to be colorful and dramatic. Gemini's kind of dramatic. Put the two together, they get along pretty well. Some people's sun and moon don't mix very well at all. You take a Gemini with a moon in Capricorn, take a Capricorn with a moon in Gemini. So you can see trouble right away. But in this chart, you got a pretty good blend. The odd-numbered planets get along well with odd-numbered planets, and even-numbered planets get along now with even numbers. And what I mean by odd numbers, Aries first, third sign is Gemini, fifth sign is Leo. Odd and odd. If you want a general rule of relationships, stick to your odds and odds, evens and evens. But that's even very general. So let's go to the chart. So we see your moon in Leo at 9 degrees of Leo. Okay? The moon being emotions, moon in Leo people are very expressive, they're very dynamic, they're colorful, they can have issues with never being wrong, they can be a little arrogant sometimes, they're very proud, but it's hard to tell. Leo energies are much tamer with the female gender than they are with the male. Moon in Leo, you have a high propensity of arrogance when it's found with the male, because males lean towards alpha male being arrogant anyway. Females are different. Next, you see, I'm going to get to this later, the moon is next to Pluto, 7 degrees away. So the moon picks up Pluto traits just by being near it. And Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. So this moon is deep. The moon in Leo is not deep, but the moon next to Pluto is very deep because of the Scorpio quality. So what you see already is you see the lightheartedness of Gemini, you see the lightheartedness of moon in Leo, but the moon's next to Pluto, and that's all about going deep. Scorpio qualities go deep. The psychologist, the miner, digging deep. So we know Yvonne is not the typical Gemini. Typical Geminis are very happy staying on the surface. You try to draw them deep and they get very uncomfortable. They don't want to go there. With the Scorpio quality in her chart, she's comfortable doing both. And this is going to show you and blow your mind. You need to take the medallion off your neck that has your sun sign and throw it away. We're all so over-identified with our sun sign, it is ridiculous. I've got 6 signs in my chart. Very strong. Libra, Scorpio, Sag, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. I've got all 6 represented very strongly, primarily 3 of them. That's normal. So, we got a Gemini with a moon in Leo. The rising sign is what? The rising sign is Taurus. I think that's very, very good. Okay, how did the rising sign come about? Okay, now remember, she is born between midnight and sunrise. The sun would have been here in Gemini at midnight. The sun would have been in Gemini here at sunrise. This is your horizon. This is what you see in the sky. So that morning she was born at 3 o'clock in the morning. You could have looked in the sky and you would have seen Jupiter. And that's it. Because you can't see Chiron. And that's not a planet. You would have seen Jupiter and everything else would have been a star. So the sun moves through the zodiac in 30 days in Gemini, but this whole thing spins around once per day, once per day, once per day, because the Earth is in the middle spinning. That's how the houses come about, because the Earth turns around. So the sun in Gemini means one thing here, the sun in Gemini up here means something else, the sun in Gemini setting means something else. The sun in Gemini at midnight means something else. That's your houses. So, because the birth time is so critical, we now know the 4 angles. This is given us through trigonometry. This is given to us by which house system we are using. There are many house systems, which is just how we're going to divide up the sky. So she's got Taurus rising. The sun in Gemini, moon in Leo, Taurus rising. Okay. The rising sign is very difficult to talk about. The rising sign is how, like your window, how you see the world, how the world sees you. It's not a phony front. It's a real part of you. But I really like it because what's the main problem with Geminis? They're too flitty. They bounce around. They change the subject. They can't stay tuned. They just jump. Well, Taurus is the opposite. Taurus is very calm, like John. Very calm and centered. This balances her chart out greatly. Now, here's really a perfect instance here. When you see somebody, you usually see their rising sign. That's why we still can't see Yvonne, but if you could see Yvonne would appear to you to be very calm and placid and steady. But you get to know her, the inner person, that's the sun sign, and the moon in Leo. So we would find her to be much more changeable, much more open, much more flippant, much more fun, lively than the outside, which appears calm and stable. See? That's why those 3 things have to work in sync. Now you can have a real mess because the 3 don't get along. You can have harmony, which she does. Sun in Gemini, lighthearted, intellectual. Moon in Leo, colorful, demonstrative. Taurus, settled, anchored, stable. The birth time sets up the angles, and that's critical. A great big deal. If there are 2 things that mean a lot in astrology, it's this. It's the 4 angles, what signs they're in, and the orbs, O-R-B. How close is that moon to Pluto? Okay, how far away? That's what an orb is. Are those planets lined up perfectly? Are they a little off center? That's why we're going nuts this week, because the orb between Uranus and Eris is getting so close, it's going to become identical on the 18th or 17th. It's going to be the same degree. They're going to kiss. They're going to be lined up with the Earth. When the orb is close, it's just like that guy driving by your house, and all of a sudden the truck is vibrating, and your window is vibrating, and it gets more and more, and it gets to that point where your window sounds like it's going to break. That's the harmonic, the wave. It's an most intense moment. When I look at charts, I don't want anything too close to anything else. It's just too much. I want a little breathing room. And sometimes people have planets so close together that they can never be themselves. The other one gets in the way all the time. So the orb is really important, and the 4 angles are important. And I'll show you why. All right, in her chart, the 4 angles are, this is the horizon, this is her ascendant, Taurus. Her descendant is always exactly opposite. That is Scorpio. The midheaven is Capricorn. The nadir is Cancer. So she has Taurus, Scorpio, Capricorn, Cancer. They're pretty stable signs, those 4. The ascendant is me, how I see myself. The descendant is you, how I see you. How I see me, how I see you. Me, my partner. Me, my wedding. Me, my marriage. That's why this is called the house of marriage. This is the house of self. These 4 angles are critical. Where am I going? Where am I coming from? What's my family? What are my roots? Where am I going to? Some of you may have read on my Facebook this week. I just got back my DNA results and found out I'm not that Italian at all. I'm mainly Georgian and that part of Russia, which was shocking to me. But that whole area of your ancestry is the bottom of the chart, where you came from, what's your family like, what is your roots like, this is my job, where am I going, what is my calling. These are the critical parts of a chart. They're set up by the birth time. Ascendant, descendant, midheaven, nadir. Every 3 minutes and 56 seconds, this changes by 1 degree. Every 3 minutes and 56 seconds. Can you see a different chart with the moon up here? No? All right, let me repaint it. I'm showing you the planets at the moment. These are the, can you see the moon up here now? This is where the planets are at this minute. If you watch this closely, you'll see this is a live clock. This is a live clock of where the planets are. The Jupiter has just risen. This is if a baby were born right now. Jupiter has just risen. This just changed from 29 to 30. Mars is setting. The moon is rising. If you go outside, you'll see the moon pretty high in the sky. All these other planets, the sun has gone around today. It's set. Now it's going down towards midnight. Now it's on 34. Do you see it? 35. So the ascendant changes a degree every 4 minutes. All right, back to her chart. So I move along. Do you see your chart again, Yvonne?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
That's not it.
So what's really unusual, you do see it?
No, that's the transit chart.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have trouble here now and then. There's your chart, right? Venus rising? No, it's having trouble for some reason. All right, let's try it again. Yvonne's chart?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. So we see what are the other 3 personal planets? Mercury, Venus, Mars. They could be anywhere. Now, there are caveats. Mercury can only be 3 places because it's closer to the sun than we are. So Mercury, all people's Mercury, everybody, their Mercury is in the same sign as their sun or next door. It can only be 3 places. So all Geminis in the world have Mercury in Taurus or Gemini or Cancer. Hers is in Gemini. Well, she wouldn't even notice Mercury in Gemini because she is a Gemini. What is her ruling planet? Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So it just means she has a investigative mind. She likes novelty. She likes trivia. She likes to talk. She likes to learn about all different kinds of things. The next 2 planets that are really important are Venus and Mars. Now your Venus, since it's closer to the sun than we are, it can only be 5 places. It could be in the same place as the sun or any of the 2 next door. So Venus has to be in Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, or Leo. Hers is in Taurus. All the other 8 planets can be anywhere they want. Now, Venus in Taurus, there you see. Venus in Taurus, along with Taurus rising, is very stable. This is another nice thing for her. This is showing we're starting to see as we sketch. she's got a strong stability to her, which is not the case with Geminis. But that's why you can't bank on sun sign. Venus and Taurus, they want to go on a picnic. They like to sit on the ground. They like to grow a garden. Taurus is very earthy. They like gifts, like baskets of stuff, baskets of fruit. They don't really want to go in the air. They don't want to go on a balloon ride. They want to do things on the earth. They want to go see a cavern. Really, they want to go down into the earth. They want to go see somebody's marvelous flower garden, watch things grow. Is that true, Yvonne?
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
very much.
sure. It's coming from the Venus and Taurus.
Although
So-
I wouldn't mind a balloon ride.
So if you're going to date somebody, always look at their Venus placement, and that's generally how you should treat them. Because Venus is the yin, how you like to be treated. Mars is the yang, how you like to treat. So if your person has Venus in Leo, make a big deal about them. Get a star named after them. If their Venus is in Pisces, take them to sit by a lake and don't talk. Their Venus is in Aquarius, take them to do something weird and they'll love it. You understand? But so far, we're seeing a pretty good harmony. We got a sun in Gemini, lifted up buoyantly, emotionally, with the moon in Leo. Got the Taurus rising. We got the Mercury in Gemini. And we got a stable Venus in Taurus. So you don't ask this Gemini. Geminis are the ones that get married 8 times. Not this lady. Venus in Taurus, she wants to be married once. And it's in conflict. So even though it's stable, she does have a conflict. The Gemini likes the variety of different people. The Taurus wants the same old, same old. So we see a mild friction here between the two. Okay, now we go into the Mars. That's the 5th and final personal planet, Mars. And the Mars is found in Libra. Okay? Mars in Libra is very gentle. It's not a strong placement for Mars. It's too concerned about what the others think. I would act. Mars needs to be strong. I would act, but what do you think about that? I would like to go to this restaurant, but where would you like to go? So it's very compromising, almost too compromising.
Jerica is cracking up.
Okay, well, she's the Pisces who knows it's true. Okay, Jerica has an interesting chart, by the way. Okay, I'm not going to go much further with the outer planets because they become more generational, descriptive of your high school class, because they're slower moving. They're not so much you personified like Uranus in Cancer or Pluto in Leo. We'll get to them later, but now we got to get to what's really important here. Number 1, the overall pattern of this chart is a bucket. So you see a bucket, almost like an umbrella, and there's the handle, Jupiter in Pisces. Okay, it's called the handle because it's by itself. Jupiter is absolutely wonderful in Pisces. Jupiter is how you expand. How do you go forward? How do you reach out? And Jupiter in Pisces means this woman reaches out with love. She loves her friends. It's in the house of Pisces, in the house of friendship. It's the real thing. Geminis don't love their friends. I mean, they can love their friends, of course, but not like love, unconditional love. Geminis are very changeable. Well, Jupiter in Pisces, she's always turning the cheek. She's always saying, give them a break. She's always giving a person an extra buck. She loves people. She has a natural born faith in humanity. True?
Well, it's a little shaky these days, but for the most part, that's
A
true.
little shaky these days, I understand. Okay, but her chart's based on this. This is the leading planet in the entire chart. So we know this Jupiter is a big deal. We may have to keep you for next week too, because there's a lot to this chart. The next thing. So every time that Jupiter gets hit by something, your entire life changes because it's your main planet. It's just like you being in the Marine Corps and your leader goes out and something happens to him, he comes back. You think your life's not going to change? When your leader changes, you change. Look at the United States. The rest of the world thinks we lost our mind. Oh, we did.
Yeah.
Different story. Now, so the Jupiter at 7 Pisces is a great big deal because right now Neptune is at 12. Neptune has been in this area the past couple of years. And what that has done in the 11th house of groups, in the past couple of years, she's been drawn to joining spiritual groups. Drawn to it, or brought the group to her, because she's ready to learn more about the stuff beyond the intellect. That's the outer planets are the big deal. They're the big cosmic planets. So you've been going through lots of spiritual growth in the last several years. As a matter of fact, you're now, since Neptune is now at 12, you're probably now just coming out of the fog. Where the hell was I for a while? But when you were in the fog, you couldn't tell. As Neptune moves past it, you start to be able to discern where you were. Now, I want to point out a couple of things here. One, the Venus is extremely powerful because it's right on the ascendant. Remember, ascendant, descendant, midheaven, nadir. The most angular planet, these are called the 4 angles. The angular planet is Venus. Well, since Venus is right by the ascendant in the sign of Taurus, it makes you very Libran. Why? Because Venus rules Libra. So for a Gemini, you might like to dress like Cyndi Lauper and dress differently every day, but the Venus in Libra is so strong, you're very interested in your style, how you look. You don't treat it cavalierly, which a Gemini would. You treat it much more like, what is the style? Clothes and looks are very important to you. Okay? This is where that comes from. This is major because it's right by your ascendant. And that's so important, we probably see that theme going strongly through your past life chart. The next thing I noticed, there are a couple more really important things. Do you notice? Can you see Chiron here, everybody? Chiron like a key? No. It told me it couldn't show it.
Yeah, you did.
Well, it said it didn't. Do you see Chiron here?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Elke. Chiron is all by itself. And in my opinion, Chiron, even though it's in Sagittarius, Chiron makes her very much like a Virgo. Okay, now let's take a look here. Chiron, I think, is the ruler of Virgo, and Virgos are very meticulous, detail-oriented. Instead of the Gemini, what the heck, let's do this, let's try this kind of, let's try these different things and kind of flip it. The Virgo's not that way. The Virgo is exacting. Let's do this exactly that way. Let's get these things in order. Which one sounds more like you?
The Virgo.
See? And you could spend the rest of your life looking at your chart, trying to figure out why. It's because the Chiron's by itself. That's what makes you so Virgo-like. So now we got a Gemini who's got Leo qualities. She's got Taurus qualities. She's got Libra qualities. She's got Jupiter in Pisces. She got a strong Virgo. This is a normal chart. Now you see why astrology has not gone broader to more people, People can't do it. They don't realize all these wheels are inside of wheels on top of wheels. They don't know how to weight it. They don't know how to say this is more important than that. And the more we go into your chart, I'll be showing you how this part of the chart is really dominant over that, but you have to build the pieces. Now, critical, couple of things here. Do you have a job in finance?
No,
What is your job?
I'm a writer and editor.
Writer and editor, which is excellent for Gemini. Well, with this Chiron in the 8th house, you would be very good with finance. Okay, this is a big deal. This could be the biggest deal of the chart. The moon next to Pluto. 7 degrees apart. 6.5 degrees apart. What happened? This is in the house of early childhood, the upbringing. What happened to you at age 6.5? Every year represents a degree.
I was molested by a neighbor.
I'm very sorry to hear that. I don't want to go into any details, but I'm not surprised at all. Every degree between these two planets represents a year. This was all pre-planned, in my opinion. You knew this would happen. All the souls involved agreed for this to happen at the exact time. Probably give you the date. Why? Even though I'm very sorry for such a horrible experience, and 1 out of 3 women have it. You, at the soul level, you needed that experience to propel you towards what you really want to do. And if we were going on a deep, I know you and I are going to do a deep personal reading someday, and we will explore that molestation is at the center when we try to answer the question, what is your mission in life? Because they're directly related. Okay?
Okay.
Now I'm going to talk about a couple more points here. The moon next to Pluto, usually it's very difficult to read. I think the toughest thing in the zodiac to read. I see that Karen disappeared. Karen's one of my longtime students who masters in Moon Pluto. It usually means you and your mother did not bond in a healthy fashion.
That's true.
But see, this is something I want Elke to hear. You cannot make formulas from these things. You might find out you and your mom did fine. But usually what happens when the mother of the moon is next to Pluto is the mother was usurping your innocence. She was living off of your innocence, which is why so many Scorpios marry Gemini people. It's unbelievable. They're not a good match. You see it all the time. But the Scorpio is attracted to that innocence. Look at the vibes Marilyn Monroe gave off. She was all Gemini Scorpio. Sex pot in the middle of being a child. Now, I don't want you to talk about anything, Yvonne, you're uncomfortable with.
My mother was a Scorpio.
Okay. Did you have a feeling that she was sucking from you psychically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we had a difficult. Well, it was. I suppose it appeared pretty normal from outside, but it was difficult.
Right. Well, one of the things is, what I really think is she was jealous of your innocence.
I always felt like she was jealous of me, and that was the problem.
Well, she couldn't see you were a reminder to her. Remember I said the boats gets far from the island? You were a reminder to her how far she was from her own innocence.
She, in my whole life,
I know this is being recorded.
she rarely.
I'm completely aware this is recorded, and Yvonne knew that. Yes.
That's fine. But she, in my whole life, there was only one period of a couple of years when she would even tell me she loved me. Even on her deathbed, literally on her deathbed, she would not tell me she loved me.
Okay. Well, and what I'm going to do with you personally, I don't want to go into this anymore because too delicate, too personal. But what I'm going to show you is that she treated you exactly the way she treated herself. No different.
Hmm.
Now,
I can
well,
see
what happens is, I don't want to go on anymore with this because it's too delicate, but I do want to say the moon Pluto is, the moon picks up plutonic energies. So instead of being kind of an innocent Gemini with a moon in Leo, you now pick up the moon in Scorpio qualities from the Pluto being there. And the problem with the mother is she never gives you proper definition. You don't know where she is and where you are. That's the problem with the moon Pluto. Where does she end? Where do I don't end? And the moon is so screwed up anyway. That's why you see these 80-year-old women talking about my baby. Where's my baby? I mean, it's just weird. There's a healthy kind of my baby, and there's an unhealthy kind of my baby. And I could write a whole book on the moon because it's so problematic. But what happens is that moon Pluto becomes the essence of this chart. And we will find out. I'm getting to the point now. Watch this. Couple more. Next, you see how close the sun is to Uranus? Here's the sun out of sign. One's in Gemini, one's in Cancer. These are about 7 degrees away. So we see right after the molestation, the complete awakening a year later. Sun next to Uranus. Complete reversal, complete awakening, shocking. You don't have to go into it now. But what this does, this makes you very Aquarian because Uranus rules Aquarius. So we see in your chart, and this is normal, very Jupiterian, very Libran, very Taurus. Lots of Gemini, lots of Aquarius, lots of Leo, lots of Scorpio. Who knows this Saturn in Virgo is a big deal. A lot of Virgo here. You've got about 6, 7 signs strong in you. This is how it comes about. Now, what I'm going to do with you personally is this. The secret to your chart is this. Why do you have Saturn opposite Jupiter? This is your main planet because the bucket pattern. Why is it opposite such a critical Saturn in Virgo? And what it does to try to survive this constant fight, expand, contract, expand, contract. Jupiter, Saturn is typically found in the chart of people. Invest the money. Oh, let's collect the money. Let's spend the money. Let's save the money. Let's reach out. Let's draw our belt in. This constant fight between expand, don't expand. So anytime you expand, you start to feel guilty thinking you should save. Anytime you start to save, feel guilty because you think you should have more fun. And these two things just fight it out all the time. I got this in my chart. But what do you do with it? You send all the energy to that Mercury. Right at that point right there. See, the fight goes on here. This is the T-square. And all the energy is sent to that Mercury. Right there. And that's why anytime that point gets hit, your whole life changes. Because your whole life is about balancing out that Jupiter-Saturn. Now, that Jupiter-Saturn is a big story. It's something we need to take into private discussion in your reading. It's not simple to discern. When I look at your past life harmonics, I started to get an idea what was causing it. But you can see just through the very beginning, I mean, right now, we should have a drawing now that's, you've seen artists draw and they got like the general shape of the face that's very light. That's about all we've got so far. That's how mind-blowing a good reading can be. We see what her dynamics are like. We see the moon Pluto sits in this chart like 2 railroad ties. Spike, spike. Where did they come from? Where did they come from? Now compare that to what you see in the paper about a Gemini. And now you get the idea how a chart is read. If you have any questions, I'll address them, but I would much rather do this deeper in the personal reading. Do you have any questions?
No, I think you've done a great job. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Do you think this kind of sounds like you?
Jerica, she's had to leave now because of the storms, but through the up until the time she left, she sat here laughing and nodding her head yes and pointing at me and yes, that's you.
People, this is where your life comes from. I don't know why. These major parts of you are represented in these charts. They are. When those points get hit, see, that's one of the ways I do a reading is I find these sensitive points and I find out, well, what happened when this planet went over there? What happened when that point got hit? And through studying what happened in the past, I can get a sense of, well, this point in your chart's really not that strong. And this point really is explosive. And that's why usually in my readings, and I work fast, usually in my readings, it takes me almost always 40 minutes to get the idea. And up till 40 minutes, I'm playing, I'm feeling, I'm searching, I'm looking. And after 40 minutes, I think I got the main story. And then it usually goes to 70th minute, which is when it ends itself, comes to an end. Okay, I'm going to mute your audio and open it up now to questions for anybody. Anybody else got questions about anything? You can see, I will unmute you, Ann, now you're on.
Hi. Do you ever use fixed stars?
Very, very rarely I do, but frankly, there's so many of them. There are, I also think, I've got to be honest with you, I think there's quite a tendency through old mythology to put such a negative spin on these things. I think a lot of them come out of the medieval times and have not been modernized or explored enough. But we're talking about adding at least 96 more points to the chart. You can do that if you wish, but I find you hands are full just by doing a regular chart. Mildred, you had a question? Mildred? Ninka?
Yes, I do have a question. How is the Neptune that is now crossing her Jupiter, how is that related to this opposition?
Which opposition? The Jupiter-Saturn?
The Saturn, yes.
Excellent question. Excellent. Why? Jupiter in Pisces is so fabulous. It's so beautiful. It's so loving, but it's opposite Saturn and Virgo. Saturn and Virgo is, well, I didn't ask you that question, did I, boy? You know, drill sergeant. Speak when you're spoken to. You don't believe that. That's a bunch of junk. So you can see what the problem is in the chart. And I told you all charts, the real basis of a chart is spiritual. She comes out of a spiritual background where she had great advancement. She had great faith, but she had to live with somebody, the town, the church, the father. Somebody was real critical, and she was caught in the trap of that Jupiter-Saturn. Now, that's why she sends all her energies to Mercury, which means how did she was forced to deal with it. She couldn't deal with it. How did she deal with it? She escaped into the mind. Go
Yeah,
here, go here, go here, go do this, go do this, go do that.
But I think she's using the mind now to figure out the dichotomy and to come to balance, you know?
Okay, now that's quite possible, but the reason behind it is the Neptune is crossing the Jupiter. The Neptune has been crossing the Jupiter, and Neptune brings grace. It brings faith. It is the anti-Saturn in Virgo. Let me show you.
It liberates her.
It brings her spiritual knowing. And so she can battle back against this Saturn in Virgo. As a matter of fact, Neptune right now is at 12 degrees. So Neptune is really going to have it out with this Saturn. So when Neptune gets to 13, it's going to really speak to that Saturn. And Ninka, it's not going to come along and disarm Saturn because she needs that Saturn. But she's going to feel inside the Neptune growing, the faith growing, and she's going to start relying on that Saturn less and less. She's going to stop falling prey to its criticisms. Do you understand? More and more and more. Neptune increases the faith. Now, it's not magic. If she's not open to the Neptune, it won't do anything. She'll get spaced out. But if she is open to the Neptune, it'll get better. Something is happening beyond what we've even said, or she wouldn't be having a reading right now. But yes, the Saturn in Virgo is very tough on that Jupiter. It's the exact opposite of what that Jupiter is. It's doubt, it's restriction, it's emotions being tied up tight. It's the epitome of conditional love. It's not even about love. It's about austerity. Who's big with Saturn and Virgo? The Tea Party. The Tea Party's based upon Saturn and Virgo opposite Venus. Just don't give anybody any food or any air, and we'll all be okay. That's a Tea Party. Say no to everything. So what's happening? I'm looking forward to my personal reading with her. She's starting to find the faith. The Neptune part of her is growing. She's going to start shedding this past life. She's going to start finding the faith to drop all these self-defeating habits that were brought about by being with an overwhelming Scorpio mother. That's my opinion.
I have a question, Rick. For the chart that you just read, is she more baseline mental or is she more baseline heart? And my intuition is telling me that she's trying to learn how to trust her heart.
I think you're exactly right, and I don't know how to answer your question. And my opinion is she's doing the Gemini dance, just like you're seeing Trump do it, but on a different level. Trump gets you on one foot, then goes to the other foot, and that way he doesn't want to show you that he has no center. That's why he does that. But Yvonne is different, okay? I think Yvonne is really in a dance, and she's unable to go with either one, go with the intellect or the emotions. She gets the one, then the other, then the one, then the other. And I don't think it's time yet for her to favor one or the other. I think what needs to happen now is she needs to dismantle the destructive parts of all this past life pattern. She's going through a major change. Notice how she's having this reading 1 week before Eris conjuncts with Uranus. So in a way, Suzanne, watch this. In a way, while this Uranus and Eris are conjuncting here, 24th degree of Aries, you only have to look at that. If I were bringing her in my office now, my main thing is I would look right here. And for everybody, Uranus and Eris is in 24 Aries, but it's in a different house. And with her, it's in the middle of her 12th house. So what does that mean? The 12th house is the house of the unconscious mind. So what did I say to you earlier? The Uranus-Eris conjunction is about finding and exploding through blockages to your evolution. She's had this laid out in front of her. For 3 weeks, we couldn't get to her chart. 2 weeks, we couldn't get to her chart. Now we got to her chart. It always happens at the right moment. What's happening now is her unconscious mind is exploding because it wasn't ready till tonight. She wasn't ready to look. She wasn't ready to get in that boat and turn around and see how far that island was. Now she is. It sucks. It stinks to see you far from the island in fresh water. And a lot of paddling you got to do, but now she's ready. She told us about molestation, which is heavy duty, awful tough stuff. But it's my opinion that she's now ready to deal with it. And it is very common with children of Scorpio parents that it takes them 55, 65 years to catch their breath. I've seen it many times because being around Scorpio energy is very heavy duty energy if you don't have some yourself. The fact that she has Moon next to Pluto gives her a little bit of birth energy. She's used to Scorpio energy somewhat, but a typical Gemini would be trodden upon next to a powerful Scorpio. So the answer is, in time, I think we will know more, and I think that she'll be able to balance out that energy more and more. But the answer now is, first we've got to save Yvonne. First we save Yvonne. Then we recapture her. Then we put her mother in her proper place. Somebody's phone is really squeaking. There it is. Okay. We save Yvonne first, so there's a self. So largely what will happen during the next month as I talk with her is we get those rusty handcuffs off. But she's ready, or else it wouldn't have come to our attention. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, good. I got time for more questions if you do. One or two more.
I have a question
Yeah,
on T-Class.
Susan A., yeah.
So my mother had a T-square of Mars opposite Pluto and the whole thing squaring a Sun, Saturn conjunct in Libra.
Well,
Does that mean that anything that would have gone by the Sun, Saturn would have triggered all of those planets?
of course, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then you have to examine that closely. You got Mars opposite Pluto, making a T-square to a very weak Sun in Libra, being that it can't stand its ground, the Mars-Pluto. You've got possible molestation in that chart too, maybe in the past life. And that molestation can also be, doesn't have to be sexual, it can be army, being forced into the front lines when you're not ready, forced to fight. But she came into this lifetime uncomfortable with male energy. She's very uncomfortable with somebody who was overbearing with her, heavy-handed with her. So what did she try to do? Send it all to Sun, Saturn, and Libra. What did she try to do? Behave. Anytime things got intense, she tried to behave. It didn't work. Behave.
So Mars Pluto is really volatile, right?
Mars Pluto usually is volatile, but it's more of heavy-handedness. I'll force my way through.
Yeah.
But see, also, you got to realize that your mother, the Mars Pluto, is her. So there is a part of her. She tries to keep that kindness, that Sun, Saturn, and Libra. She tries to keep that kindness, to keep that Mars Pluto quiet. But in a lot of ways, what we need to do with her is to resurrect the Mars Pluto and bring out the aggressiveness and let it be, and then try to get those planets working in harmony. And that's why you got all these energies in Aries now.
She had no problem being aggressive.
What?
She had no problem being aggressive.
Okay, well, then you got a whole new story now. That's completely different then what I would say there is she's lost control.
Oh, yeah.
She's lost control. And what it is misplaced rage. It's just misplaced. And what's the rage against? The rage isn't somebody who abused her. The rage is she's upset with herself because she left God. There's only one reason for guilt, in my opinion. Because you left God and you think he's going to beat your butt and you got to go back.
Well, she was.
I'm going to turn off the recording right now. Thank you all for viewing.